without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our two speakers who are actually going to introduce themselves. Sophia Reed, partner, and Anthony French, partner.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you for coming today. It's lovely to be given the opportunity to come and talk to you. Our firm are great supporters of the MGAA, and we do a lot of work in the London market, so it's lovely to be able to be given a chance to speak with you today. When we were thinking about the topic that might be of best interest, we picked on chronic pain. It's not a new issue, but it is one where we are seeing an increasing number of claims, and these can be incredibly expensive. So I thought it would be useful today to explain the background of the claims and also explain strategy and tactics and how we deal with these claims. You need to be able to spot a chronic pain case and deal with it in a very different way to perhaps other personal injury matters. By way of background, both Anthony and I are partners in the London office, which is just around the corner, which is lovely, and we both handle a wide variety of different types of personal injury cases. I've been at the firm for just over 8.5 years, and I do mainly EL and PL casualty work, but I've got quite a wide experience of chronic pain cases. Jane has asked me that in order she can keep her CII accreditation, I need to draw your attention to this slide, and hopefully by the end of the briefing you will have a better understanding of the topic. We'd love to take questions, but we'll probably keep those to the end if that's okay, and Anthony and I are both around later on in case you want to come and discuss anything with us. So without more ado, I'll hand over to Anthony to just run through what we'll be talking about.
Right. Hello everybody, good afternoon. My name is Anthony French, I'm a partner in the London BLM market office working with Sophia Reed and Jeanette Newman. For the past 10 years I've specialised in catastrophic injury work, predominantly spinal cord and brain injury, but over the last few years I've seen an increasing number of chronic pain cases coming through. They've always existed, but the value of the claims in my experience are now increasing. So I thought I'd have a look at that and talk to you about it. The claims tend to be quite weird and wonderful. One of the most unusual claims, which was actually psychologically mediated, was a claimant who suffered a rear-end shock, minor road traffic accident, and she ended up suffering a double detached retina, which in itself had causation issues, but anyway. Those detached retina were repaired, and from a neurophysiological perspective, all the neural pathways were firing, everything was said to be okay. But she actually, from waking up to having the bandages over her eyes, experienced a psychological reaction, which they call psychogenic blindness. And she was actually blind, so she was a member of the blind community. She was actually going around speaking about it. Now the claim was pleaded at, I think, in excess of £2 million. But lo and behold, surveillance evidence perhaps suggests that she wasn't quite as blind as she said. But there was almost certainly a period, the experts agreed, within the first couple of years, where she was most certainly blind, and there was a gradual improvement. She just didn't need to tell anyone else about it. So, with that in mind, and giving the numbers that can be involved, it's also important to remember that due to that complexity, the value of the claims isn't necessarily driven by just the claims and damages that the claimant recovers, but the complexity itself drives up costs, investigation costs, and both of these really do impact heavily on your reserves. And we thought, particularly the small books of specialist books of business, these types of claims, the indemnity spend that are incurring, are going to have a negative impact. So we thought we'd talk about that today. The term chronic pain or chronic pain syndrome is a generic label, and it's essentially a label that we as lawyers and medics use to describe a multiplicity of different disorders. Those disorders, which we'll come into shortly, are fibromyalgia, complex regional pain syndrome types 1 and types 2, chronic fatigue syndrome, and somatic pain disorder. Now, as we all probably appreciate, pain is essentially a subjective finding. I know of no expert who's told me that there is any objective way of confirming that somebody is suffering pain. There are objective signs to some conditions, CRPS being one of them. We'll look at that in a moment. You have to remember that the syndrome is a grouping of symptoms and signs whose causes have yet to be determined. So, with all those complexities in mind, they create a real problem for both sides of the litigation defence. For a claimant, proving an invisible injury is often weighed by speculation, uncertainty, and anxiety. The uncertainty for the insurer, of course, is what are we in for here? How much is this going to cost us, and what is actually real? So the talk is aiming to provide you with an understanding of some of the medical issues at play, some of the issues on causation, and we hope, come the end of it, you might have a bit of more of a clue as to some of the tactics and strategies that you ought to be thinking about deploying to overcome them. So during this talk, we're going to look at the following areas. Understanding chronic pain as a medical condition, and that will include the diagnosis, treatment, and also spotting the signs. The difficulties and litigation risks involved in chronic pain cases, tactics in defending them, and in particularly litigation, using expert evidence to best effect, and that would be looking at specific experts for specific problems, but also how to instruct them and what you should be guiding them to do. One of the things I wanted to do very quickly, if I may, I appreciate we've got a fairly wide audience here. How many of you are actually dealing with chronic pain cases in your caseload or on your reserves? Are there any people in the audience that are dealing with them? Is anybody's experience there increasing? Okay, well then hopefully this might prove of some useful insight for you. So rather than have one person lecture at you, Sophia and I are going to share some of the slides. And I'm going to start, if I may, by looking at chronic. So in what context does it really exist? So these are definitions provided simply by the dictionary. The adjective is described as an illness persisting for a long time or constantly recurring. And the informal is of a very poor quality, and I see that on the back of Sophia's disappointment at the weekend with Scotland that she's managed to shoot on that here. Before I look at the next slide, which will actually look at some of the conditions, what I wanted to do here is just pause for a moment, because what we often see is in a medical report, a claimant will be said to be suffering from chronic pain. And you have to ask yourself, well, is that a diagnosis and is that a condition? My view is it isn't. It needs to go much further than that. Chronic pain in that context, really from my perspective, means simply that it's been present for 6 months or more. And it shouldn't be read that the pain is chronically bad either. That is just a loose term that experts use to say, well, look, she's got chronic pain, but it's been there for 6 months. Doesn't necessarily mean that she's chronically suffering bad pain. So, and it's also important to bear in mind that the claimant has the burden to prove that the claimant has a condition, and that condition is attributable to the accident or the trauma. There was a decision in 2007, Thorpe versus Smith, which was probably the tipping point of these claims coming out. In that claim, the claimant relied on an orthopaedic expert and psychiatrist. Both of the experts concluded that she was genuine, that she was genuinely suffering with symptoms, but they couldn't inform the court what the condition was. And as a result, the judge found that she hadn't satisfied her burden of proof and awarded only modest damages. The claimant appealed to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal said, no, you haven't satisfied the causation test, you haven't been able to prove what the condition is. So I think it's important to bear that in mind, that the burden is on the claimant. But I think it's also, we need to be slightly reflective of the fact that this 8 years ago, as we'll see, claimants, solicitors and experts are much more attuned to this problem now. And if you read the judgment, you'll probably see that the case wasn't run terribly well, and now you would probably have some form of chronic pain diagnosis which would get over that hurdle. So what is chronic pain? I'm going to quickly whiz through this one if I may. I've already described it. It can be a generic label, and there are 4 items there which I've listed. Chronic regional pain syndrome, types 1 and 2, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and somatoform disorder. The next slide is going to deal with the first 2 of those points, and I'm going to tackle those, and then Sophia's going to talk about fibromyalgia and somatoform disorder. So, chronic pain syndrome, if I could take that first. This is an umbrella term. It's not a specific condition. It tends to be made where there's no clear diagnosis that has been made for a specific pain disorder. So, for example, chronic regional pain syndrome, that is a specific diagnosis. So where you've got something which can't be explained by way of physical objective symptoms, isn't CRPS, then it will tend to be given this other chronic pain syndrome label. There are within that different forms of conditions that are being diagnosed, and I'll just quickly run through those and give you a bit more information about them independently. Neuropathic pain, nociceptive tissue pain, psychogenic pain, and pain symbolia. So neuropathic pain, you may or may not have seen this before, but tends to come about where there's damage or disease in the peripheral and central nervous system. Claimants often describe tingling, burning sensations. Reflex sympathetic dystrophy is a form of it, and phantom limb pain, where people have suffered amputations. You might hear people talking about how they can still feel their toes. That is essentially neuropathic pain. The pain is often triggered by an injury, and the injury may or may not actually involve damage to the nervous system. Essentially what's happening here is that the alarm system within the body is malfunctioning and sending messages of pain through. Nociceptive pain are essentially nerves which sense and respond to parts of the body which suffer from damage. So you might see that in sprains, bone fractures, burns, bumps, bruises, and inflammation. That type of pain tends to be time limited. So where there is a recovery from the physical damage, you tend to see that the nociceptive pain should respond to medication as well. So it should correlate to the recovery of the problem. Psychogenic pain, as I've talked about, a little bit of the psychogenic blindness is very similar, but it's pain or disability caused by increased or prolonged by mental, emotional, or behavioural factors. So in those types of issues, you're looking primarily at a psychiatrist to help you out and understand that condition. And then there's pain symbolia, which is essentially just an insensitivity to pain. So those are some of the examples of chronic pain syndromes. CRPS types 1 and types 2. For those of you who don't know, CRPS is just an acronym for chronic regional pain syndrome. And types 1 and types 2 differentiate, and I'll talk about the diagnosis in a moment. But it's a condition which essentially affects the nervous system. It will tend to involve the arms, legs, hands, and feet. And people tend to involve or report having burning sensation, skin sensitivity, sweating, and swelling. As I've said, there's two types. Type 1 is otherwise known as reflex sympathetic dystrophy, and this tends to occur when there are minor injuries or a fracture which precede the onset of the symptoms. But importantly, there's no nerve damage in that type of condition. Types 2, which is otherwise known as causalgia, if I pronounce that right, develops after an injury to the major peripheral nerve, and there is obvious evidence of nerve damage. Excuse me. In those types of cases, you might find a neurophysiologist who will actually undertake a series of tests to confirm the damage to the nervous system. Now, these symptoms manifest themselves objectively, and they can tend to be diagnosed or observed rather by swelling, hair growth, discoloration, temperature change. So, as an example, you can, it's not the clearest picture I'm afraid, it's a picture on a slightly smaller scale, but you can see with the left foot, the foot at the top, that there's obviously evidence of some swelling there around the ankle joint, but the left foot is obviously more swollen, it's a much deeper red. The left hand, to the right as you're looking at it, you can see there's a slight clawing element to it, and there's evidence of increased hair growth on the hand. And frankly, that one just bloody painful. That left hand, on the right as you look at it, is obviously grossly swollen. You can see it shiny. The nails have grown as well. That's another thing to look out for. There'll be some excessive nail growth. So these are all objective signs that experts can diagnose chronic regional pain syndrome. And these tend to be expensive to deal with, no doubt about it, but more easily understood because you can actually see the damage that's been caused. So, having seen them, what are the difference between chronic regional pain 1 and 2? whilst there are objective signs, it is a condition that is essentially a diagnosis of exclusion. So, there is no agreed universally accepted criteria for diagnosis of that actual condition. And many clinicians rely on what they call the Budapest diagnostic criteria. But there is also the International Association for the Study of Pain, the IASP. Now, that says that chronic regional pain syndrome 1 is diagnosed where the following criteria are satisfied. And if I can just read verbatim what they say. Number 1, the presence of an initiating noctus event or cause of immobilisation. So here it might be that the arm was underused for a period of time to recover from a shoulder injury, for example. There's continuing pain, allodynia, which is described as a perception of pain from a non-painful stimulus, or hyperalgesia, which is an exaggerated sense of pain disproportionate to the original inciting event. There has to be evidence at some time of edema, changes in skin blood flow, or abnormal pseudomotor evidence in the area of the pain. And as I've said at the beginning, the diagnosis is excluded by the existence of any condition that would otherwise account for degree of pain and dysfunction. That's why I say it's a diagnosis of exclusion. It's really important that you deal with your experts about excluding any other underlying cause for those problems. Type 2 is also diagnosed, or the criteria is described as being the presence of continuing pain, allodynia, hyperalgesia, but here after nerve injury. Remember that type 2 involves nerve injury, but it's not necessarily limited to the distribution of the injured nerve. There has to again be evidence of edema, changes in skin blood flow, and again the diagnosis is excluded by the existence of any condition that would otherwise account for that pain and that dysfunction. That gives you a real whistle-stop tour of the conditions, and there are experts out there that will talk for hours about each of them. I just need to give you some of the main bullet points, just so you can understand the difference and just have an appreciation that there are some objective signs for some of these conditions. So I'm going to hand you over to Sophia, who's going to talk to you more about the psychological disorders, and I'll hand over to her now.
As you can see, this topic has lots of nice, easy words to say, and I've been left with two of them: fibromyalgia and somatoform disorder. Let's look at what they are, and then let's look at how the courts deal with them, and then let's look at the valuation, and then we can look at strategy as well. So what is fibromyalgia? It's a condition which manifests as widespread musculoskeletal pain with symptoms of fatigue as well. You'll find that claimants suffer from muscle, ligament and tendon problems, but it doesn't affect the joints. Diagnosis is by reaction to certain trigger points around the body, and it usually comes subsequent to a physical injury, but where it's not obviously related to the site of that injury. So think about a whiplash claim where the claimant might have a neck or back injury, but they've got widespread lower limb problems as well. Women are said to suffer from it 7 times more frequently out of 10 than men. Obviously don't complain as much. And it's usually seen during childbearing years, or after the age of 70. You can imagine you've got very sort of stressed women because hormonal disturbances, stress and depression are also thought to increase the risk of developing it. Am I painting a nice picture of the type of claimants that we see? Extensive investigation of the topic isn't said to be useful, and in fact is discouraged by the medical experts. So therefore doctors are wholly reliant upon what the patient's telling them. It's very, very subjective rather than objective. And we're looking at patient histories, self-reported symptoms. There is the assistance with a physical examination, and as I said, to make a firm diagnosis of fibromyalgia, you need to have tenderness or pain in 11 out of 18 specified tender points around the body when that area is pressed. Excuse me. Somatoform disorder. This involves, as Anthony said, a psychological disorder, and it comes in various guises. Some are conscious and some are not. And when we're looking at the litigation side of this, it's really important to make sure that you define these and see where the claimant is perhaps lingering rather than them being a genuine. This condition was previously called hysteria. It's also gives you another insight into it. And it has typically chronically persistent physical symptoms, but there is no physical origin of those problems. Again, it's entirely subjective, so it's open to exaggeration. You can distinguish this from other psychiatric disorders by the symptoms and by the way that the claimant deals with them, the dramatic nature of the claimant, whether they're wanting to impress people with the length of the symptoms. And there are three main brackets. I thought it'd be useful to set it out in sort of tabular form so that you can see some are conscious and some are unconscious. And dealing with those different orders, factitious are conscious. This is often known as Munchausen's disease. I'm sure you all know what Munchausen's is, but where the claimant has either no injury and would like the attention from usually medical practitioners. They pretend that they've got symptoms so that they can be treated and they have that attention, and also attention from family and friends, people that they want to be dependent upon them. Hypochondriasis, the hardest one to say, is where the person thinks they're worse than they are. It's malingering, but it's unconscious. So they have this fear that they're desperately ill, whereas actually they're not quite as badly affected as they think they are. And then we come on to the defendant lawyer's favourite, which is malingering, which obviously is conscious. There's always a reason behind malingering. In the scheme of litigation, then obviously it's for gain. They want to amplify the extent of their injury so that they can get more damages. So we've seen the different disorders there. So it'd be useful to see how the courts deal with them and how particularly they value the extent of the injuries, because obviously that's what you're interested in, how much to reserve for. We use a very helpful book called the Judicial College Guidelines, JC Guidelines, used to be called the JSP Guidelines, and it's a book where you can look at any type of injury, whether physical or psychiatric, and it's set into chapters, and you can value the claims, so loss of an eye, damage to hair, broken leg, and it's all set out there. For the pain, it's dealt with under Chapter 8, and I thought it would be quite useful. I don't know if you can read that on the screen there, but it deals with a variety of pain disorders. CRPS has its own categorisation, but the factors here are the ones that the courts are going to look at to determine how much the injury is worth and which bracket, whether severe or moderate, which it's going to fall into. So, for example, the effect of the condition on the person's ability to work. Are they now saying they're completely restricted, they can't work at all? Are they saying that they can only work part-time? Are they saying that they can't work in the pre-accident role and they're going to have to change their career path? What treatment's been undertaken? What's been the effect of the treatment? Has it assisted? We quite often see medical reports where the expert will say, with this treatment, the prognosis is good, and they will make a full recovery within 12 months of the treatment finishing. Obviously, that's going to lower the value of the claim. Also, the age of the claimant can be determining, and finally, the prognosis. As I said, CRPS has its own separate heading. I've put these categories here, the severe and moderate, because I wanted to explain and show you the eye-watering level of damages. And this is just for the injury alone. This is just general damages, not special damages, loss of earnings and things, because these can be expensive claims. The 10% uplift refers to the changes in the rules from the 1st of April 2013, when the criteria for success fees under CFAs were taken away, and as a result, the claimants were entitled to 10% uplift on generals. We're starting to see that coming through far more in the cases we're dealing with now, and as we get further along the line, we're just going to be looking at the 10% bracket. But you can see for the severe category, it's just over £70,000, and for the moderate, it's up to 44. The other pain disorders, again, I've got the severe and the moderate brackets there. They tend to be roughly the same. The JC guidelines are updated every year or every 18 months. We've just had the 13th edition, and those are the figures from that. So eye-watering amounts. Now we've seen the value, let's look at strategy and tactics and how you can defend these claims and hopefully reduce them to a much lower level than the claimant would like to receive. I'll hand back over to Anthony to talk to us about that.
Before I come on to that, might be worthwhile just going back here for a moment and just reflecting on what I said earlier. CRPS, as I said, is a diagnosis exclusion. So if you can provide another explanation for that pain, then you want to do so, because you can see here that if they're getting in the top bracket, they're getting £70,000 for PSA alone. So you really need to analyse that on the diagnosis. Anyway, red flags. Before I come to that though, and before we look at strategy and tactics, we have to reflect on what it is that make these claims problematic and difficult. Once you understand that, you start getting a better understanding of what it is you want to do to investigate them. Many of the complications don't tend to arise in other claims. We get a broken leg, you get a fractured spine, you know what you're dealing with, you can see it, it's obvious. These claims tend to have little or no tissue or nerve damage. There's generally no organic signs. You can't see it on an MRI or a CT scan, and we as defendants hate that. We want to see what we're paying out for. Physical manifestation isn't always obvious. The pain can be psychological, as we've already explored. There are always a number of issues at play here from a psychological perspective. I dealt with a claim where surveillance evidence was served. The claimant's solicitors had to meet with their clients and the witnesses that had produced witness statements, one of whom was her husband. And the husband had absolutely no idea that the claimant was as capable as she was being shown to be on the video surveillance. And that goes back to your fictitious disorder. She was getting attention, presumably, that she wouldn't otherwise have got. So you need to understand what's going on in the background. You need to investigate the background of all of the people involved and start thinking about what it is that we're actually dealing with. There is no uniformly accepted criteria for the diagnosis or any objective measurement of these conditions. That leads to huge issues between experts when it comes to joint statements. And as a lawyer, trying to navigate your way through two possible outcomes, it's very difficult to advise you as insurers what's most likely when we get to court. The pain that's reported, at least, can be hugely debilitating and certainly outweighs the type of pain that you would expect from that type of injury. It forms the basis generally of significant claims running into hundreds of thousands of pounds, and late notification. So in that context, I'm thinking you might get a report of a claim. It seems to be, to all intents and purposes, a minor collision. 24 months later, you're suddenly being served with evidence which suggests it's actually much more serious than you thought. And the claim that you had reserved at £25,000 is now you're being advised to reserve at £250,000. That's a big issue for a lot of insurers. Another problem we're finding is the effect of cost budgeting. We sort of anticipated it, but it's actually coming to fruition now. Claimant lawyers, keen to avoid having their strategy and costs slashed by judges at the first CCMC, are front-loading everything. They're getting everything done at the outset. And you're being served with proceedings with complete medical evidence, witness statements and a schedule of lots. You're then given 3-6 months to unpick all this. So it's really, really important that you're alive to these issues early to avoid that happening. There's lots of ways we can do that, and a lot of them will be about setting out clear communication with claimants and correspondence, setting out what it is you want to know, if there are delays, understanding what that delay is. And we'll come to that in a moment. So, knowing what the problems are, how do you detect a claim that might be in the offing, as it were? On the screen, there are, if my maths is right, 5 that I've listed, but that's not limited to those 5. And I'm going to run through some of the additional things that I think you should be looking out for. And these are observations and references that you might pick up from medical records, medical reports. And they will include such things as any reference to a pain management clinic. That's obvious. If the doctor referred them to a pain management clinic, you know there's something going on. If there's discoloration of the skin, as we've already seen, you should be thinking, is this a CRPS claim? Any reference to unexplained spasms, pins and needles, and any deterioration of symptoms. Bear in mind that most physical injuries follow a predictable path of recovery. Orthopaedic injuries tend to improve over 3, 6, 9 months. If there is any point that things are deteriorating, it's not going to be orthopaedic, there's going to be something else going on, and you should be alive to that. There tends to be no organic basis for the symptoms as we've looked at, and neuropathic and positive findings might be evidence for neurological examination. There will be references to psychiatric issues and psychiatric histories. Any reference to medications such as pregabalin, amitriptyline, tentin or nicotine patches should be alerting you to the fact that the claimant is being diagnosed specifically with pain medication. That isn't the type of medication you get when you turn up your GP complaining of a sore throat. That is specific to pain disorders, and if that's there, there's something you need to investigate. A claimant not being back at work after 6 months, but that's a bit of a general one really. Any non-localised pain, and any claimant that's telling you or telling the expert that they're experiencing pain on a level of 8 out of 10 more than 3 weeks post-accident should be thinking, what else is going on here? Nobody is suffering that level of pain after the acute phase of the injury has started to set. Remember, the body repairs itself. So, as we've already looked at, pay close attention to vulnerable claimants, and female in their 40s, as Sophia has already said, are particularly prone to chronic pain conditions. But so are people without structure in their life. People with family history of vulnerability are also vulnerable. Look out for people with unexplained symptoms. Another one in the GP records might be irritable bowel syndrome. And finally, if a claimant's solicitor has nominated experts on you, and you haven't heard from them from 6, 9, 12 months' time, why is that? What have they been told by their expert? What else are they investigating that you don't know about? If there is silence, you should be asking the questions to understand what it is. Request disclosure of the documents, medical report, setting out clear reasons why you want that information, because it's going to be absolutely invaluable to us as lawyers when we go before the judge to say, look, this has been forced on us 3 years post-accident, we need more time. So carefully crafted letters, invaluable stuff. Malingering, this falls within tactics generally, and Sophia's talked about it already, and we'll talk a bit more about it when she looks at surveillance, but there's just a few things here that I wanted to sort of bear in mind. I think, from my own perspective at least, that there is a definite view that chronic pain is viewed all the same way. It's a chronic pain case. Well, it isn't like that. They're very different. You need to treat them as a separate, distinct case each time you get one. Where you treat them globally and disrespectfully as though it's just a chronic pain case, what tends to happen is you don't make early offers to get rid of them. You tend to undervalue the case when looking at the potential range of value. So if there's a range of value, you think, well, we'll go to the bottom end. Does that really reflect your litigation risk on those claims? And finally, where there is a huge divergence of views, and you might have a defence expert that's telling you, this is a 6-month whiplash injury and she ought to have recovered. Think, fact, $3 grand, $5 grand. Against a claimant's expert who's telling you it's a chronic pain syndrome case and she's never going to recover, you might have a schedule against you of £500,000. That type of imbalance, there's no good sticking to an offer of £10,000 and taking that to trial. You need to reflect the litigation risk. So, and I understand it, this restrictive, we're all sceptical of these conditions. Invisible injuries we don't understand, we can't accept them. But having that approach tends to slow the litigation. It allows the claimant's solicitors to get under the skins of the claimant. They start to believe it more, and it becomes even harder to pick them. So try and keep the pace of the litigation moving. It gives less time for the claimant's solicitors to get in there and reinforce the message. I've made a note here. One of the things you want to try and do is drive a wedge between the claimant and their lawyers. The last thing is you want them working together to prove it. So, malingering. Well, it's hard to prove. We know that. Proving that a person has not suffered an injury is nigh impossible. Judges, generally speaking, want to help claimants. I don't know if many of you have been in court. You think you go in there with a strong case and you see within 2 days that everything's falling apart and the judge wants to do the best for the claimant. That is the reality we face, frustrating as it is. The claimant always has the argument of the old good day, bad day. Got me on a good day. Well, how many of those good days actually are there? One small period of surveillance isn't going to be enough if you're looking at a chronic pain condition. They'll simply respond, well, I got that, I was fine that day, but goodness me, I'll pay for it the next day. And lay witness evidence. This is a decision of Noble and Owens. This is really just a warning about the persuasiveness of lay witness evidence, if I can put it that way. The case involved a road traffic accident in 2003, and the claimant was severely injured. There was an assessment hearing in 2008, and from memory, I think the claimant suffered a spinal cord injury. he received just over £3.3 million in damages. This is, only a substantial claim. But the defendant got wind post-settlement that the claimant had bought himself property with a bit of adjoining land. So I thought, what's going on here? So they went and had another look at the claimant post-settlement, and they observed the claimant doing stuff on the land that they thought inconsistent with the presentation, at least, of their medical report that he had served before the court. So they applied to the court and said, we've got this horribly wrong. You've awarded damages on this basis. You can clearly see here that he's much more able. He has plainly lied to the court and to his experts, and his damages should be reduced. There was a lot of evidence introduced at that trial, but the upshot was, well, actually, let's do a straw poll. Do we think, faced with surveillance of the claimant doing more than he said he was capable of, were the damages reduced, or did the judge kick it out? Hands up, who thought the damages were reduced? No, it's kicked out. They said no, the defendant hadn't discharged the burden that there had been fraud. Now, one of the persuasive aspects of that particular case was that on one of the days, let me get this right, the surveillance agent had filmed the claimant doing stuff in the adjoining land. The claimant managed to produce, unlucky for the defendant it seems, a lay witness who had turned up a couple of hours later, and it was a contractor who was doing some work at his house. And during the course of the contractor and the claimant having a conversation, the claimant reported to the contractor, I've overdone it, I'm really in pain and I need to sit down. And the contractor provided a witness statement, and essentially, whilst the surveillance evidence showed this improvement, the judge was persuaded by this witness. Even though there was evidence that he had lied to the HMRC, he had said that he would have this huge care regime, which of course he didn't purchase, we all know they never do. So it's a bit of a warning. So even when you think you've narrowed and you've got it, you haven't always. So surveillance is an essential tool, and Sophia's going to look at it in a bit more detail. So really, just wanted to summarise, so from a tactical perspective for these types of claims, there's really three things to bear in mind. You either demonstrate that the claimant is lying, and by God that's hard. Obtain evidence to show that the condition is not accident related, and that's really where you need to be looking at CRPS, is there another explanation for it? And if you can't do either of those, then you need your expert to tell you that the prognosis is favourable on conclusion of the litigation, which tends to be a psychological barrier for the claimant, and also on receipt of treatment. And we'll look at treatment again in a moment. But those are really the areas you need to be looking at from a strategic perspective and tactics. I think that's going to be me moving on to Sophia. I'll come back to you in a moment.
So when we're looking at some of the strategies to involve, we need to look at the specific type of pain disorder that's been diagnosed. If it's unspecific, then you need to probe, you need to find out what it is, you need a proper diagnosis. And if a specific diagnosis isn't possible, then, or perhaps your expert isn't qualified, or they've used the wrong type of expert, you need to make further inquiries. We're finding that if the context of the case is suitable and you do have a firm diagnosis, so for example, CRPS type 2 with an objective diagnosis, then make a proper early offer to try and conclude it. Our advice to most insurers on these type of claims is if you can pay a bit more early on, you can cut out so many costs later on, cost of medical evidence, the cost of increased damages. You might want to pay a bit over the odds at an early stage to get rid of the claim. It also helps with costs, protect yourself on costs as well. And it might be prudent to keep liability open. I appreciate that not every case is as easy as that, and you might have some cases where you're completely done on liability, and you have to admit. But if you've got the aspect of contributory negligence, it is a great lever to be able to use when you're negotiating with people. As Anthony said, if the chronic pain litigation is taken at a reasonable pace, if it's a slow pace, it lets the other side build in lots of time, it lets the claimant think they're actually worse than they are, the symptoms aren't getting any better, there's a reason for that because of the litigation, and it all gets amplified. So you want to get on with these cases, you want to keep them under a really strict regime. When they're litigated, we try and keep a really strict timetable with the court and have a really firm set of directions to make them adhere to, and then we can move it on at a fast pace. Interim payments, It says on the slide they're a tool of compromise. I'm sure that you often get asked for interim payments, especially pre-litigation. They are quite useful, but also you can see the problem of a claimant not necessarily wanting to settle or not having any pressure on wanting to settle if there's a steady increase of availability of interim payments, if the insurers are quite happy to keep topping up the interim payments ever so often. Obviously you want to avoid the cost of an application because the chances are if they apply to the court for an interim they'll probably get it. But think about it, if you can make a really good tactical, slightly generous Part 36 offer, you can persuade a judge and say, look, we've made this offer, we want to conclude this now, it's not doing the claimant any good for it to be progressed, and let's not have the interim payments, let's settle it now. If it's not capable of settlement, you need to think about your own medical expert, and obviously we have a whole database of people that we use, and make sure you use the specific expert. I've got a claim at the moment where I've got a fantastic hand surgeon because the claimant's got really badly damaged hand, and they've got a general orthopaedic surgeon. Obviously, you know, if my chap's at court compared to an orthopaedic surgeon, my chap's got the specialism of the hand, and hopefully his prognosis will be preferred. So be really careful about who you instruct. And don't be afraid to challenge your medical expert. I had a report from this chap actually the other day, and he sent it through by email and he said, can you give me a call? I've got real concerns about the claimant, and it was great. Equally, there's a psychiatric expert I speak to quite a lot, nothing to do with me, not personal, but just, you know, on claims. And he's lovely, and it's really useful to get his report and then to speak to him, to gauge how he saw the claimant, what he thinks of them. He did say to me the starting point is always to think they're malingering. You know, I suppose if we're asking a defendant psychiatric expert to examine somebody, then we would be thinking that. But, you know, they're on your team, get them on board, you're paying for them, you need to have a team approach here, so don't be afraid to challenge them. And obviously send them as much information as you can. Anthony's going to deal with documents in a minute, but we always get all the medical records, do a chronology, cross-refer, looking at the personnel records, looking at the GP notes, there might be inconsistencies, looking at what they're telling the employer is really interesting. I don't know how many people use social media. Facebook? Yes? Your account's closed on Facebook? Yes? No? And Twitter? They will be after this. It's a fantastic tool to look at what they're telling their family and friends about the accident, the circumstances, what they can and cannot do. We have a great deal of fun when we read some of the social media reports that we get through. So I'm going to hand over to Anthony to talk about documents, which I'll touch on very briefly, and I'll come back and talk about surveillance in a minute.
Before I look at that slide, I keep going back, but I just want to make one point which I think is an important one, which Sophia touched on. Interim payments are a tool of compromise, but they're also a lever. If you've got a claimant solicitor that's telling you nothing, if withholding documents, then offer an interim payment if they're asking for that one, and say if it's conditional on X, Y, Z being completed. So use it there as well. Anyway, documents. Doesn't need much more introduction. Absolutely crucial. You should be getting everything that exists. Don't take it as read what any claimant tells you. Get the documents and uncover it for yourself. That will include personnel file, DSS records, rehabilitation records, and within that you'll be thinking physiotherapy, psychological CBT, and you need to be thinking again everything pre and post accident as well. Work colleagues' evidence again, hugely important. What do colleagues have to say about how the claimant was when he got back to work? Are they shocked that suddenly he's off work again when for 3 weeks he was lifting 20-kilo barrels and stuff up a ladder? And the only other thing that I've got to say on documents is OCD. And that isn't OCD that, oh my God, I've got to wash my hands, I've been instructed, I want to use it again. But it's obtain, cross-reference, deconstruct. That's always my motto for these cases. Get everything, cross-reference it, and deconstruct it. And the cross-referencing, I would suggest, should be done chronologically and in a category of documents. So you can see it in a tabular form, date, different references to different problems, and you can marry up how consistent the claimant has been. Forgive me. That summarises documents and the importance of them. So we're constantly just running out of time a little bit, so I'm going to whiz through that. And Sophia's going to talk to you about surveillance now.
I love my job acting for defendants because it's very tactical. You're always on the back foot, then you do have to have a clear strategy. And one of my most favourite things is surveillance. And I could talk for ages about this, but I'm not going to, obviously. I'm just going to be very brief. But why use surveillance and why use it in chronic pain cases? It is compelling. It's the most useful tool in a defendant's armoury. It can show very clearly what the claimant can and cannot do, especially useful to look at what they say they can and cannot do. We've all seen particulars of claims, statements, supported by statements of truth. I can't do this, I can't drive, I can't walk more than 500 yards, I can't shop. Ooh, I need to be lifted here, there and everywhere. Fantastic. If you can get the right surveillance, then it's very persuasive for your experts and for the claimant's experts, and also, as we've referred to before, it can drive a nice wedge between the claimant and his or her solicitor. Nobody likes a client that's not telling them the truth, and it can be a really great tool to get a claim settled early on. It bolsters the defence. When do we get it? Well, as early as possible. We've referred to the good day, bad day previously. Our advice would be definitely cover the defendant's medical examination, but the claimant might be alert to that. So cover different days as well. You avoid the good day, bad day, and you can catch them out. I thought it might be useful to share details of a case that I had recently with a lovely lady, we'll call her Mrs. Liar at the moment, who said that due to a shoulder injury at work, minor shoulder injury, she had widespread pain. My team are laughing because they'll know how much I loved this case. She couldn't do anything. She was bedbound, she never went anywhere, and when she did, she had to be in a wheelchair. Fine, okay. So we had 3 periods of surveillance. We had her at a hospital appointment, not with our expert, but just a normal one with her consultant. She walked in merrily with her husband, sat for a long time in a very soft chair with no problems whatsoever. Great, fantastic. The next period of surveillance, she was out for 3 hours, and I know it was 3 hours because I sat and watched the whole 3 hours, shopping with her husband again, carrying a walking stick she said she couldn't do without, no wheelchair anywhere, 3 hours of shopping, carrying bags, bending down in shops to look at things on the lower shelves, sitting having lunch with her husband, fantastic. Then she goes to see our medical expert, and she told us in advance she couldn't possibly go unless we put her in a taxi. So we arranged a taxi. She is carried from the house, which was no mean feat because she's quite large, into the taxi, and the wheelchair's put in the taxi. And when we get to the medical expert's room, she's put with the wheelchair's put out, she's put in the wheelchair, she's carried in, and then she's brought back out again. Fine, okay. She gets home, and the taxi disappears, and she hops out of the wheelchair, and she puts the wheelchair away, and then she stands nonchalantly having a cigarette with her husband outside for 15 minutes, and then stubs it out with her legs and goes back inside. Super. Brilliant. The claim was pleaded at £800,000, and we settled it for £25,000. And we got £43,000 worth of DSS benefits back, because when the crew, the Compensation Recovery Unit, saw the CD of the surveillance, they said these benefits aren't anything to do with the claims. Fantastic. So one very happy insurer, one very relieved insured because they had a high deductible, and one very smug dependent lawyer. Okay. Our message is it does work. You do need to choose the right agent. There's a whole host of people out there. You need a reputable agent. Gone are the days of the agent letting the car tyres down on the car. I don't know if some people remember that when I started. That used to be done to see if the claimant with a bad back would then actually try and bend down and change the tyres. That's not going to pass the court now, is it? I had a great claim a few years ago where the claimant lived in a very remote area, and obviously you are restricted with surveillance to where the claimant might live. It would have been really obvious to have a van or a car parked outside the property. So my surveillance expert, who was ex-SAS, dug himself into a hole for 3 days. I had cracking surveillance, but I didn't ask him to, but there we go, he did it. It might seem expensive to get surveillance. We're looking at between £3,000 to £5,000. Some experts that we use, because if we send them a lot of work, they will say, if I don't get them, if we don't see them, then we won't charge you. We'll do an extra day, no charge. There are deals to be had. It's really useful. You ought to think about the expense of it when you're looking at the potential value of the claim, especially when you're looking at the severe category we had earlier. very briefly, treatment and rehab. As the slide says, they're very different. If you can't avoid the treatment, then if you can't avoid the treatment, treat the disability. Don't just treat the pain. But you need to get these people better. It's no good if they keep going on to pain clinics. I had a case the other day where the claimant told the medical expert, "I've had 22 sessions of CBT and no help at all." Why? After 8, you know, most courses of CBT are between 10 and 12, and you know after 3 or 4 whether or not it's working. I mean, you should have stopped it at 8. It's ridiculous having 22, but that's a bit of a red flag as to whether or not he is telling us the truth. Ask your expert if the treatment is more likely to be useful after litigation. Don't think about extending the litigation and having the treatment now. The claimant feels they've got something that they have to have wrong with them in order for the treatment to be there. If you've settled the claim, they haven't got anything to prove to anybody, and it's you know, far better to do that. Settle the claim, perhaps agree that you'll pay for the pain treatment afterwards if they need it. And gosh, how many of us have seen cases where suddenly they don't need any pain treatment after they've got their final settlement? I've just bounced on to instructing the right expert. That's all I really want to say about treatment and rehabilitation. Anthony's going to finish with the right expert, and then we will just have some time for questions if anybody's got any.
Sophia talked about surveillance and using a reputable company. Absolutely crucial. There's experts out there who hold them out as anti-surveillance experts, and claimant solicitors are instructed them. And what they're looking to try and do is look for inconsistencies in recording patterns in the defendant's surveillance evidence. If they can allow them to then say, "I believe there is raw footage out there," even when there isn't. You know, the reality is that these cameras aren't running all the time. It's just not possible. So something just to bear in mind. Forgive me. So, instructing the right expert. Instructing the right expert for the specific case isn't always easy to understand, and it isn't always immediately obvious what the right expert is. We've seen here how the conditions can change and evolve with time. So if you're not sure, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't send a quick note to an expert with a summary of what the claimant's expert says, who the claimant expert is, and what diagnosis is being made, and asking your expert, "Can you help?" Because it's going to save you a couple of £1,000 when you find out that the report you've got is only rubbish. So, very quickly, there are 3 distinct categories on here: orthopaedic, psychiatric, and pain/rheumatology. Orthopaedic is plainly obvious, we all know what that is. They're trauma surgeons that look at physical problems, legs, breaks, spines, sprains, etc. There's 5 subpoints up there. Acceleration. What I'm thinking about here is the case where you've got, can you develop a causation argument? Thinking back, that's one of your main areas of attack. Can we develop a case that this claimant would have come about with a chronic pain case, syndrome, but for this accident? Are there underlying problems here that have really been accelerated by the accident, and as a consequence merely accelerated the pain condition? That limits the number of years of damage you might need to pay. Your expert should be looking for any underlying conditions, again, bearing in mind CRPS, diagnosis of exclusion. What else is there that they can diagnose to explain the problems? Are the level of symptoms compatible with the nature of the injury that they're complaining of? Have the symptoms been consistently reported by the claimant over a period of time? And finally, and I think Sophia's already talked about this, specialisation. Get the right orthopaedic expert on the right area of the body that has been harmed. There's no good having a knee expert commenting on a hand. Psychologist and psychiatrist. My own preference is that I plumb for a psychiatrist. They're medically qualified. They diagnose and treat generally by medication and prescription. Psychologists are looking at behaviours. So you might want to think about those experts where you've got some sort of pain disorder or some other disorder that might exist. There are previous psychological factors, vulnerabilities, and again, pre-existing disorders and how they interplay with the current symptoms that are being described. Pain experts and rheumatologists want to look at that. What are the diagnoses that can be made? What are the treatment options? What are the prognosis? Sophia's going to very quickly tell you about double-blind testing, which is something she's experienced recently and is really quite interesting. And one thing that isn't up there that probably should be is neurologist. A neurologist to look at nerve damage in CRPS type cases. Do you want to just quickly deal with the
just skip to
double?
the last slide and we can do it as a conclusion.
Fine. Oh, well, Sophia will come back to the double-blind testing on the conclusions. I'll just very quickly talk to you about instructing the expert and also marshalling your expert on his evidence. Get your expert everything. Be clear as to what it is you want the expert to advise you on. If there's any causation issues that you have identified, put it in the instruction letter. Don't just say, here's a blanket letter, do your job, tell us what it is. Give him some help. Experts overwork, and if you can give them any guidance and point to any specific points in the records, then they'll really thank you for it and they'll take the time to really address them. Make sure they get all the right documents, and once you get their report, don't be afraid to pick up the phone. I'm a huge advocate for letting the expert do his job. He's an expert to the court, we have to remember, and they're the ones with the expertise. But that's not to say that you can't talk the issues through with them. Have they considered every point on the journey to their conclusion? And just during the course of those conversations, sometimes they haven't, and sometimes they need to amend things. So that's something to bear in mind. And finally, the joint statements, as I've already alluded to, are hugely important in these cases. It's a big battleground for the experts. There's generally little agreement between them, and a lot will fall on the way in which the joint statement comes out. Now, I favour my experts taking the lead on this and preparing a draft. The experts are supposed to actually, if you look at the rule, they're encouraged to meet to discuss the claim. The reality is they're also overworked. What they do is they draft up a document, they cut and paste their report, email it over, and the other one will add a few comments and track change, and that's it. Gone are the days of actually meeting in a room and discussing it. So if your expert is going to be doing it, get them to do the first draft. It gets their evidence in before things can be wrote. It's much harder to row back when the claimant has put his own slant on things already. And that brings us to conclusions.
I'll stick to do the conclusions because then we can take some questions if anyone's got any. But the double-blind testing was just something that came up the other day. One of my experts said to me, orthopaedic expert, I don't believe this lady, let's get a double-blind tested. Has anyone else come across this? Thought no. It was a test where obviously they're blind, so they can't tell what is happening. They can't manipulate the test, and it showed that she was blind. Basically, she could use her leg. So it's carried out by a physiotherapist at a hospital. But it's just really useful. It's something that I'm going to use far more now. So to conclude, I hope that's given you an insight into the type of cases, how to spot them, the tactics and strategies to employ, and giving you some hope that they are more defensible than perhaps you thought they might be, and we can reduce the value of them substantially with the right evidence. Thank you so much for listening to us today. If anyone has got a question.
Sorry, is there any reason why more of these, there's an increase in the number of these chronic pain cases coming through?
Does this work? Yes. I think there's a number of reasons for it. I don't think there's any one specific thing. The reality is, the case that I talked about earlier, that case in 2007, I think that was a sort of tipping point when you used to get orthopaedic experts that would prepare a report and say, well, this person will make a recovery within 12 months. That person didn't make a recovery in 12 months, let's say, and the claimant would be sent back to that expert, and the expert would say, I can't explain it, she should be recovered. And you would say, well, we'll settle it, and that would be the settlement. Now people are going away and actually trying to really think about why there might be ongoing symptoms. Now whether those symptoms exist or not, I don't know. That's for our experts to tell us. But I think that's one reason. Orthopaedic experts are really shutting it off now. Once they were prepared to stand up and say there's no reason for this, now they just say we can't explain it from an orthopaedic physical perspective. We'll hand it off to someone else. And helpfully, what they're now saying actually is a lot of them, I suggest you go and see the pain clinic. Well, that's the worst thing you need to do, from our perspective at least anyway. Claimant lawyers are getting better at it. That's another reason. There's specialist claimant lawyers out there, Brian Barr being one of them. They pick up most fibromyalgia cases. They're working with good silks, good counsel, and they're educating APIL. So there is just a lot of information coming down which is influencing claimant solicitors about how to run these claims. we can kind of have a coffee and you can talk to us there.
With something like fibromyalgia, how easy is it to determine what the cause is? Because if you say it can be so many different things, and people go through so many things in their life, how do you determine if it's related to their work or childbirth or whatever it may be?
It goes back to documents and cross-referencing, and with psychiatric reports, you'll see the psychiatrist saying they've had a real history of this, that and the other, IBS, and then you'll ask them to factor what percentage that the actual index accident was responsible for the symptoms that are ongoing. It's investigative work, and we have red flags when we get personnel files from the claimant. The one I talked about was surveillance. We've got 2 legal files of personnel files. Now, sure, your personnel file's probably this big. It's a red flag. They've got other issues. She had a huge history of a myriad of different problems, different disorders. IBS is a real red flag, but it's a question of cross-referencing all the documentation, drilling down to try and find other issues that might be responsible rather than the index accident.
From my perspective, and I can only speak from a case that I dealt with recently, sleep disturbance is a known precipitating factor of the development of fibromyalgia. So part of the problem, and you'll find that there's certain counsel out there, probably should remain nameless for the moment, but I'm happy to tell you who they are later, will seek to explore and develop cases for fibromyalgia based on the fact that the accident caused a deprivation of sleep, interrupted sleep pattern, which then triggered the fibromyalgia. So when we were faced with that argument, Severa's talked about, we managed to get a lot of documents before the accident, and you could see in the weeks leading up to the accident that she was complaining of chest infections and poor sleep. So we already had that precipitating event before the trauma, which could also explain. So it's just looking for things like that.
Any other questions? Okay, I'd like you to join me in saying thank you very much, Sophia and Anthony, for what I found an absolutely fascinating talk. I've got lots of questions, but I shall save those for afterwards. And also, I should have said that BLM sponsored the lunch.